All right, in this video, guys, we are going to look at multiplying a fraction by a whole number. So remember that when we talk about multiplication, we are looking at, in this case, 6 groups of 1/8, or 1/8 6 times. So we can do this several ways. One of the ways that we can do this, we know that multiplication is also a repeated addition. So I could write this as 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8, and I'm going to do this 6 times. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And since we've already added fractions, we know that 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 is going to be 6/8. Another way that we can look at this is we can multiply 1/8 and we can write 6 wholes as 6 over 1. Remember that any whole number can be written as the number over 1. And so in this case, then I can just multiply my numerators, and I get 1 times 6 is 6, and multiply my denominators, and 8 times 1 is 8. So again, we get 6/8. In addition to be able to solve multiplication problems with numbers, you're also going to need to be able to model them. So another way that we can prove that 1/8 times 6 is 6/8 is by using a number line. So we're going to use an open number line. We did this with decimals. And I'm going to start at 0, and I'm going to take 6 jumps of 1/8. So I'm going to jump once, so this is going to be 1/8, and that's going to land me at 1/8. If I take another jump of 1/8, I'm going to land at 2/8. If I take another jump of 1/8, and I'm going to do this 6 times. So I'm going to land at 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, and my 6th jump lands me at 6/8. So again, I'm jumping 6 times, and each jump is 1/8. So 1/8 times 6 is 6/8. You can also use a picture. And so I'm going to draw a rectangle, and I'm going to break it into 8 parts, because that's what my denominator is. My denominator is 8 up here. So I'm going to break my picture into 8 parts, and I am going to color each group a different color. So I'm going to make 1/8 here. So again, I'm doing this for 6 different groups. 2. There's 3 groups. There's 4 groups. There's 5 groups. And there's 6 groups. Oops, that one broke. So again, I have 6 different colors. So I have 6 groups of 1/8. And 6 groups of 1/8 is 6/8. All right, we're also going to look at 2/3 times 3 wholes. So in this case, I have 3 groups of 2/3. So I can write a repeated addition problem showing 3 groups of 2/3, and I know 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3 is equal to 6/3. So I have 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 6, and my denominator stays the same. And 6/3 is equal to 2 wholes. Remember, when we have this improper fraction, or a fraction where our numerator is bigger than the denominator, we can do a division problem and do 6 divided by 3 to get us 2. Again, if I were just going to use numbers to show this, I could, sorry, there it is straight now. I could do 2/3 and I could multiply it by 3 over 1. And I'm going to multiply my numerators to get 6 and my denominators to get 3. So again, I have that 6/3, and when I do 6 divided by 3, I get 2 wholes. Again, you're going to have to be able to model this. So let's do a number line. And it's an open number line, so we're just going to have our first benchmark start at 0, and then it doesn't really matter. We don't need to put in our tick marks or benchmarks here. So again, I'm going to take 3 jumps of 2/3. So I'm going to take 1 jump of 2/3, and that would land me at 2/3. I'm going to take another jump of 2/3, which would land me at 4/3, or 1 1/3. And then I'm going to take another jump of 2/3, and that would land me at 6/3, or 2 wholes. We could also show a picture. And again, I'm going to show you 3 groups of 2/3. So I'm going to need 3 different colors. So I'm going to show, there's 1 group of 2/3. So I split my rectangle into thirds because that's what my denominator is. I shaded in 2/3 in 1 color. I'm going to shade in 2/3 in another color. And if you look, when I did 2/3 plus 2/3, there's my 4/3, and I have 4/3 or 1 whole 1/3. And then when I finally shade in my last group of 2/3, then you can see I have shaded in a total of 6/3 or 2 wholes. Right now, what I would like for you to do is press pause in the video and go to our grid work bin and grab this worksheet so that you could follow along for as many as you need. So press pause and go do that quickly. All right, good. You are going to need some colored pencils. So if you don't have those, make sure you press pause and get those as well. But for the first problem that we're going to look at, we are looking at 5/8 times 3. So we're going to do number 1 together. And hold on, let me see if I can focus that. That's somewhat better. Okay, so I need 3 groups of 5/8. So in this case, you're going to need 3 colors because we're showing 3 groups. So each of the pictures that I have are split into 8s. So I'm going to shade in 2, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 5 shaded in 1 color. I'm actually going to continue in this box so I can see total how many I have. So there's 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to do 1 more group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. So you can see that there is, sorry, I couldn't find my pencil. 3 groups. So 1 group in blue, 1 group in pink, 1 group in yellow. So 3 groups of 5/8, and I have shaded in 1 whole and 7/8. If I were to do this problem in numbers, I would be looking at 5/8 times 3 over 1, which would give me 15/8. If we did 15 divided by 8, we would end up with 1 7/8. So remember, if I did 15 divided by 8. 8 goes into 15 one whole time. And there's where your 7 comes from over your divisor. So for number 1, we get 1 7/8. Now remember, at any point in time you feel like you're ready to do this on your own, you are more than welcome to hit stop and keep moving. But if you're still looking for some help with these, then stick here and we'll do a few more together. All right, so number 1 was 1 7/8. Number 2, we're looking at 1/5 times 4. So I'm looking at 4 groups of 1/5. So I need 4 colors, and with each color I'm going to shade in 1/5. My boxes are split into fifths, so I'm just shading in one piece. There's 2 groups of 1/5. There's 3 groups of 1/5. And then there is 4 groups of 1/5. So 4 groups of 1/5, and when I look at how much total I've shaded in 4/5. If I were just looking at numbers, I would have done 1/5 times 4 over 1 and multiplied across. 1 times 4 is 4, and 5 times 1 is 5. So my answer for number 2 is 4/5. All right. Let's do one more of the shading together. So for this next one, we're going to need 9 different colors. So I got to make sure I have enough colors to do this here. And we are going to be shading in 8/10, or 9 groups of 8/10. So these are each split into tenths, so I'm going to be shading in 8, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's one group. So I've got 2, 4, 6. There's 2 groups. Here's my next group. There's 3 groups. There's 4 groups. There's 5 groups, so I need 4 more. There's 6. There's 7 groups. And let's do one more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So actually I need one more group because I need 9 groups of 8/10. All right, so there are my 9 groups. And if I look at this, you can see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 holes shaded in, and then 2/10 left over. I can simplify that 2/10 to be 7 1/5, because both 2 and 10 are divisible by 2, and 2 divided by 2 is 1, 10 divided by 2 is 5. If I were to do 8/10 times 9 with just numbers, we would do 8/10, oops, not equals, times, and we would get 72 over 10. When I divide 72 divided by 10, I get 7 holes and 2 left over out of the 10. So I end up with the same exact answer. So for the shading, I'm going to leave you to do the next 3 on your own, but there is an answer key. So if you need to look at the answer key, go ahead and do that to check your work. If you feel like you've got it pretty well, then maybe you don't need to do the next 3. All right, so we're going to look at number lines doing the exact same thing. And so for this case, you can get colors if you want colors, but you don't have to. And you can see that these number lines actually do have the benchmarks, so they're already labeled for you. And for this first one, we're looking at 2 groups of 1/4, and you can see that my number line is already split into fourths. So this is 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4 is 1 whole. So I'm going to make 1 jump, and that puts me at 1/4. I'm going to take another jump, and that puts me at 2/4. So 2 groups or 2 jumps of 1/4 puts me at 1/2. So I'm going to go ahead and write 1/2 on the line. For the second one, I'm going to be making 5 jumps of 1/3. And you can see my number line is already split into thirds. So I'm going to jump once. I'm going to jump twice, puts me at 2/3. I'm going to jump 3 times, which puts me at 3/3 or 1 whole. I'm going to jump 4, which gives me 4/3. And I'm going to jump 1 more, and that puts me at 5/3. So you can see by the picture that that is 1 whole and 2/3, or 5/3, which is the same thing. Again, if I were to do this problem with numbers, I have 1/3, and I would be multiplying by 5 over 1. 1 times 5 is 5, and 3 times 1 is 3. So we end up with that 5/3 doing our problem with just numbers as well. I'm again going to leave you to do these next 3 on your own, but the answer key will be in the booklet so you can check to make sure that you've done it correctly. Remember that if you have any more questions, you can come to a small group with myself or Mrs. Renners.